So we're going to get started in a couple of minutes, folks. Thank you so much for joining us for the Town of Nags Head Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan update, as well as Todd DeCraft's Septic Health Initiative. So my name is Holly Miller, and we've got a host of other people here from the town: Holly White, Mary Clark, Kylie Shephard, and AC committee member Bob Muller is here as well. So yeah, thank you for joining us. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, that's a little better.
We gave her a big chew bone, so all quiet here.
Hopefully that'll keep her busy and then she'll fall asleep
That's right.
like a little kid.
Right, right. Oh my gosh, she just is growing like a weed. It's just amazing. So
Gotta love our fluffy friends. They're always fun and exciting.
yeah, I'm just gonna have to wrap myself in bubble wrap or something.
Okay, we've got some staff coming on now, joining us in the background. Mike O'Driscoll, I'm transferring you over to a panelist. Andy and David Ryan, are you guys seeing everything okay? The screen and
I am, yes.
great. Okay, thank you.
Holly White, do you want to give it till maybe 5 after, and then we can get started?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to give a few minutes for everybody to join in. I think we've got a few attendees now. So welcome, guys. And we'll get started in just a few minutes.
Can we ask folks to type in the chat where they are attending from, whether they're
Sure.
in Nags Head or whether
Absolutely,
they're
I think that's a good idea.
from outside the area? We'd ask you to let us know where you're attending from. We're fascinated to see who's here in Nags Head and who is interested in the program from outside the town.
And we also have some poll questions coming up. If you do have a house in Nags Head or live in Nags Head, you can put a pin there. So that'll be a fun activity if you do have a home in Nags Head as well.
New Jersey. Wow, Bob. Welcome.
Non-resident property owner.
It was a beautiful day today down here. Bob's saying he wishes he was here. Danny's
It was very
Yeah.
nice here today.
very nice. Yeah.
Hey, is anybody going to watch the really beautiful eclipse this evening? I heard that was going to be like the longest eclipse that we've seen in a really long time, but I didn't know what time it was. So there might be some late evening tonight and check out that really cool eclipse. I think that'd be really fun, especially at Nags Head. I bet that would be amazing.
It is early morning. I think you start to be able to see it around 2 a.m. The International Space Station will also be visible tonight for about 7 minutes at some point.
Oh, excellent. Double whammy. That's great. I'm going to have to get out the telescope.
That's a neat sight. You can see it with your naked eye. My wife saw it last night briefly, as a matter of fact.
Every time I see it, I'm like, is that a really tiny plane? What's going on? And then I'm like, oh no, that's not a plane. Definitely not. So excellent. Well, we'll give everyone just another minute to get settled and jump on in here. So thank you all for joining us, those who have logged on. We're glad you are able to attend this evening. And we're also going to be recording it so people can watch it in the future if they weren't able to attend this evening. So if you all are ready, we can get started. My name is Holly Miller. I am with Tetra Tech, the project manager on our side, working closely with the town on the Town of Nags Head Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan update and Todd DeCraft Septic Health Initiative. And I'm going to turn it over to Bob to welcome us.
My name is Bob Muller. I had the privilege as an elected official to chair the committee that developed the first septic health initiative. And I was actually mayor when the first decentralized wastewater management plan was drafted. And I'm very privileged to serve on the advisory committee. I want to welcome you to this update tonight to talk about what is a crucial issue for the town of Nags Head. From the first planning documents done in the town, wastewater has been identified as a touchstone, a real risk point. So keeping on top of what is happening with our wastewater systems and finding the best ways to manage them is crucial. We thank you for joining us tonight. We hope that you will get a lot out of this presentation. We hope you'll participate in the polls and questions that are asked and the online questionnaire you'll learn about tonight. And we hope you'll pay attention when the draft report is issued in February. Share your thoughts and comments with us at any time, both tonight and throughout our planning process. With that, I'll kick it back to Holly Miller and let her begin this important presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bob. So just some logistics for tonight, because we are virtual, having a public forum like this is going to be a little bit different than in person. So a couple of things you've probably already noticed. We've turned off your video and mics just so we can get through the presentation, but you can put any comments you would like or questions in the chat, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the duration of the presentation. In addition, as Bob mentioned, we have some polls that we're going to be asking of you, and you can address that here through Poll Everywhere, it's called. So you can actually log on to Poll EV by this webpage here, and then enter my contact information as the username, Holly Miller 593, and it'll give you access to that poll. So when we get to asking you those poll questions, it'll come up with a question, you can click on things, and then it's going to give us live feedback of your answers. So we're going to be able to view that in real time and really get a feel for what you think about some of our questions that we're posing or some of the ideas that we're going to put forward tonight. And then in addition to all of that, at the end of the presentation, we'll have an open Q&A session where you can answer specific questions, or if anything comes up that maybe we didn't address, you can ask them there. So let's get started. So basic agenda, we're going to do a little bit more deep dive into introductions. We'll also go into the Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan background, as Bob had mentioned earlier. I'm going to give you a little tutorial on Septic Systems 101, just so we're all on the same page. And then we'll dive into perception and key stakeholder interview comments, things that we heard from talking to others and what they thought about the program, as well as what the future holds. And then also we'll dive into groundwater and water quality data analysis. We took a deep dive into all of the information that the town has been collecting over multiple years and really thinking about what that looks like for the septic program. And then last but not least, we'll look at the Todd Craft Septic Health Initiative and where that is today and maybe where it's going to go with some additional incentives. So just looking at the Tetra Tech team, again, my name is Holly Miller. I'm the project manager. I'm also a professional engineer and certified floodplain manager. And I've been working with Town of Nags Head since the beginning of this project really closely to try to figure out all of the parts and pieces of the Septic Health Initiative and where it needs to go in the future. Also joining me is Mary Clark. She is also on the call this evening. She's the assistant project manager, and she was actually involved in the original plan back in 2005. And then additionally on my team, we have several very key people who are technical and really know septic in and out. Bobby Tucker, and then Kateri Salk is a water quality data analysis scientist who really focused in on the bacteria data, and then Hilary Yance produced some really great graphics that we're going to show you tonight. In addition, joining us is Mike O'Driscoll and Charlie Humphrey from ECU. They pulled a lot of groundwater data through some very great techniques across the Outer Banks area as well as Nags Head. And then also the advisory committee, as Bob mentioned, they've been guiding us through this whole entire process, as well as staff, Annie Garman, Kelly Wyatt, Holly White, and Kylie Shephard. So with that, I also wanted to introduce the rest of the advisory committee. They were handpicked from several members of the community back in end of 2020. And the advisory committee members are Basil Belches, Dave Herman, Bob Muller, and Bill Simons. And if you want to find out more information about our meeting minutes or anything like that, you can actually go to the website here on Nags Head and look for a Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan, where you can read about some of the meetings and the other work that we've done. So with that, I'm going to jump into our first poll. So if you would like, you can go to pollev.com and put in my information, Holly Miller 593, and we will start the first poll. So question number 1, approximately where do you live or where is your home in Nags Head? So if you would just put a pin approximately where either you live or where a home is, or maybe even off the map if you don't live in the area, so we get an idea of where you're from. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to hopefully log into the website as well as put a pin in.
Holly, can you repeat the poll everywhere link again?
Sure, that's not a problem. So I can actually go back a slide. So you can go to pollev.com. And then for the username, you actually type my name and it'll bring you right to this poll, Holly Miller 593. Okay, let's see if anyone's populated this yet.
Holly, is it live? I have populated it and it is not showing there.
It should be live, yes.
I populated it as well, and I don't see my pins in the code.
Okay, give me 1 second. I am going to, go to the poll everywhere settings and just make sure that it's correct. My apologies. It was working earlier, so let me just try to fix that and sync those slides better. Okay, that slide apparently is not working. My sincere apologies that it was working before. So we will, if you would, instead, let's just type your name in the chat and where you're from, and we'll get that populated from there. My apologies, I don't know why that didn't work. So moving on. Just a fact, if you're not aware, over 80% of the town's wastewater is treated by individual on-site residential septic systems and not central sewer. There's a misconception that a lot of these locations on the Outer Banks are treated by central sewer, and that is not the case. There are some small wastewater treatment plants in small areas of the town, like the village and Nags Head, a golf course, the links, but most of the residents here in Nags Head are not on central sewer. So we really have to think about what that maintenance looks like for the community. And if a septic fails, it can cause a lot of bacteria and pollutants to enter our groundwater as well as our stormwater and surface water infrastructure. So that can be a real problem if you're not continually maintaining your system by pumping it out every 3 to 5 years. And that eventually those pollutants could potentially carry to the sound or the ocean, which could lead to future beach closures and really affect our quality of life in Nags Head. So from part of the Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan that was developed in 2005, we really looked at what does it mean to be on septic, and it really outlines the importance of maintaining those systems, as well as the education piece of things. Because people didn't understand septic, what that really means, it's sight unseen. We really wanted to help foster that and put that forward. So there's been a large education piece that has been put forward since 2005, as well as the free inspections that can be conducted on every single residential home within the town of Nags Head, and the rebate for the water rebate, as well as the free or low interest loan, that the town offers to residents as well. And then in addition, there's been a lot of water quality sampling, as I had mentioned earlier, to help determine if there are any failures in the area. And then as just a side, in 2019, the program was renamed in honor of Todd D. Kraft. He promoted the program heavily, and it was named after him recently. And just some background, as I mentioned, there's free septic system inspections for single family residential homes. There's a water bill credit. It is now up to $45 for pump outs. And that program is really easy. You actually just email Kylie your bill, and it gets credited to your water bill. And then the low interest loans for septic systems are available up to $7,500 for the replacement of a system. In addition, septic system maintenance guidelines and general education are put out on the town website to help people understand what that looks like for septic systems. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of testing and water quality data that the town has conducted. So in general, the Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan update has been going on since March of earlier this year. We've worked with the town hand in hand to really develop community engagement and coordinate monthly with the town and the advisory committee on determining what that looks like and what the new plan would look like in the future. We have obtained key stakeholder feedback from multiple stakeholders within the town of Nags Head, as well as several businesses, environmental groups, and parks and rec facilities, as well as rental agencies and realtors. We also reviewed the Todd D. Kraft Septic Health Initiative, and those initial initiatives are great, but is there more? Could they bring more to help promote the program in the future? As I mentioned, we also analyzed the groundwater and water quality and bacteria data. What does that look like? Has it changed? Is it going to change in the future? And are there areas that might have more problems than others, that maybe additional education needs to happen, or there's some problems with the systems that they're either aging or failing? We also will provide recommendations for the Septic Health Initiative for potential revisions, updates, and additions, and we looked at that a couple of months ago. In addition, we'll be updating the Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan to reflect those changing conditions. And as Bob mentioned, we'll be putting that forward to the Board of Commissioners in February for future consideration and approval. So I wanted to kind of take a little bit of a step back, just in case people weren't fully 100% comfortable with what septic is and what that looks like, and kind of give you a septic systems 101 education tutorial. So as septic leaves your house, water and wastewater run out of the house from your toilets, sinks, showers, dishwashers, and washing machines, basically everything. And water and waste, whatever happens to go in the sink or the toilet, it goes to a tank, and it's pre-treated there. There's, as you can see in this picture, there's two different vaults. One is kind of the a bigger vault where solids settle to the bottom, and then semi-pre-treated water goes into a second tank. It goes through a little bit of a filter, and then it goes out to the leach field where it percolates through the soil and eventually to groundwater. So bacteria actually can get carried through that system if there's too much solids in that tank, if it's not pumped out frequently, and that can actually cause some problems. So I've got a really cool graphic to show you all here. It's from Texas A&M Agri Life Extension. It's a really cool animation. I'm just going to show you a couple of screenshots from that. So here's a quick shot of a basic septic tank. As I mentioned, it goes from the house, it goes into the first tank, it sort of gets pre-treated, some solids settle out, and then water flows into the second tank where more solids settle out. It goes through the filter, which is that kind of that big long pipe, which actually needs to be cleaned out pretty frequently, annually actually. And then it goes out into the drain field where it percolates through these pipes, and treated water goes actually into the leach field, into the ground, and it gets filtered out through the system. And then if your tank is full or it needs to be pumped, those solids get taller and taller, and it actually can carry some of those waste materials into the leach field and actually can go into the groundwater system a little bit more frequently. So you can see here in this picture, those waters aren't really treated. So that's considered a malfunction. And either the tank needs to get pumped, or it could be a complete failure where the whole entire system needs to get replaced. So that's just a worst case scenario kind of situation. So it's really great to see a visual like this, especially if you're not familiar with a septic system, just to be able to understand the basic workings of one. So we've got another poll question. I hope it works this time. So we wanted to know, how has your septic system been functioning in the last 3 to 5 years? So I hope you will be able to answer this question. It's called a Wordle, so it should populate with a bunch of different words. It's working. I am so happy it worked. Thank you so much. And we've got well and good. That's excellent. Oh, we have emojis too. That's awesome. And you can put if your septic system has had problems in the past. I know I personally need to pump out my system, especially being home for the last 1.5 years during COVID. I feel that it's probably time to pump it out. Excellent. Well, I'll give you all just a couple more minutes to put in any additional words, and then we'll move on to the next question. Excellent. Thank you so much for your responses. I'm really glad that worked this time. And we have answers of good, well, there are some problems. And those can be addressed through maintenance, as well as maybe even looking at some advanced treatment systems. Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. So question number 3 is, what are your concerns about your septic system? I want to hear from you of what bothers you, what keeps you up at night. Is it system failure? Is it wastewater backing up into your house? Is it repair costs? It's too expensive. I don't know how much it's going to cost. I can't afford that right now. Is it remembering to maintain and pump out the system? I don't remember when the last time I pumped mine out. Is that something I need to keep track of, put on a calendar? What does that look like? Is it flooding over the drain fields? Is that a big concern that you're really worried about? Or is it those more frequent high intensity storms like we had a couple of weeks ago that really worry you about your system? Or is it something else completely different? So I'll give you all a couple more minutes to answer that. It looks like remembering to maintain the system is one of the highest ones, as well as those higher intensity, more frequent storm events. Excellent. Well, I will stop the poll now. Thank you all for your responses. It looks like we can't remember to maintain our systems. When did I bump that out last? I don't remember. So we've actually got some solutions to help with that, and we're going to talk about them later today. And then more frequent high intensity storms. That's challenging. How do you deal with that? How do you mitigate what that looks like? Can you prepare for that? Is there anything in your system that you can think about that you can do to help control that or mitigate that? And we're going to talk about that a little bit too. So if you're not aware, the on-site wastewater treatment systems or septic systems in Nags Head, the map I had showed you earlier that didn't work on the poll everywhere has about 3,600, just over 3,600 systems across all of Nags Head. And they're shown here in that orange type of color. In that primarily is north of Jockey's Ridge. Between the highways, you can see there's a lot there, as well as Soundside and Old Cove. In the Causeway, there's several areas in that location that are on septic. And then primarily all of South Nags Head has septic as well. So you can see there's kind of three distinct areas. I call it north of town, kind of central town / Soundside, Oceanside. And then Whalebone area kind of has a lot, Oceanside and along the Causeway. And then down there on South Nags Head, there's a lot of septic in that area. So that's just kind of a brief overview of what that looks like. And then the other colors that we have on here are purple. Those are large or more advanced systems where actually an operator comes out and looks at that system. So those are more advanced treatment. There's a lot more to it than a conventional system like the graphics I showed you earlier. And then there's also the village, as well as the golf course area. They have their own treatment system there as well. And then there are also some other areas that have different types of advanced systems. So you can see it's a pretty big percentage of houses in Nags Head that are on a conventional type of septic system. So in addition to the background and the basics, we started to dive into perceptions, and we asked people what they thought about the septic program, and we got a lot of responses back. We talked to inspectors, we talked to real estate agents, we talked to rental agencies, we talked to businesses, and a lot of different answers came out. And this I guess Wordle is kind of the summation of what that looks like. That people love this community. They love the sense of place and character, and they want to kind of keep it that way. And I completely agree. I love the town of Nags Head, and we really value water resources. It's part of our everyday life, and people might not understand the connection between septic systems, groundwater, and stormwater. It's not apparent. The septic system is underground. It's sight unseen. And so people don't think about it. It's not in the forefront of their mind. It's probably not something you talk about over dinner at the kitchen table. And hopefully you're not eating dinner right now and we're not grossing you out with septic discussions. But it's something that we probably need to have more discussions about and be thinking about it. In addition, there are more advanced systems in Nags Head than ever before. And people are starting to convert to more advanced systems because of some of these challenges. And we also heard that there's no support for central sewer. People didn't want to switch over from septic to central sewer. It would change that character. It would change that sense of place. It would change a lot of different things for the town. So that's something that we're not going to be looking at for the Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan. And then in addition, a lot of rental agencies, as well as some homeowners, still didn't understand sewer and septic, primarily septic. So that's something that we need to educate them on. What does that look like? What does that maintenance frequency look like? What can you or can't you put down the toilet? Some people still don't understand those very basic concepts. So that's something that we'll be considering and looking at in the future to help with that, especially renters coming to the town of Nags Head, utilizing this beautiful area and really thinking about what is their impact. In addition, the Septic Health Initiative program is extremely proactive. It's one of the most proactive programs in the entire country. And honestly, the town of Nags Head is a leader in that realm. And then we also heard from inspectors and partners and state folks. And they said, one of the poignant things they said was, septic system maintenance is like changing a car's oil. You need to do it every 3 months for your car. We know that. It's basics. 3 months or every 3,000 miles is something that's ingrained in us. It was, our parents taught us that. We just know it. But for septic, you don't think about that. So for septic, we need to get the message across. You need to inspect and pump out every 3 to 5 years on average, but sometimes more systems that are highly used need to be annual. In addition, we heard from Rob Crawford. He's over at Dare County. He's a senior environmental health specialist. He said, I wish others would follow Nags Head lead in being proactive when it comes to septic maintenance, stormwater and water quality. And that really speaks to the amazing program that Nags Head has developed. In addition, there's other challenges that we heard from folks when we talked to them about groundwater, water quality, as well as flooding, and then older systems. We heard that there was some old systems on Sound Side that were bottomless. There is no bottom. So the potentially untreated septic could go right into the groundwater. And that can be a big challenge, especially if you don't know it's happening, sight unseen. So those are some things that we will be looking at, and we're obtaining some information from Dare County and gathering all of those permits so we can help identify some of those areas and help fix and or maintain them. So I want to transition over to data analysis now. So my team looked at a very large pool of data that was gathered since 2005. That data was extensive and looked at nitrogen, phosphorus, as well as a lot of bacteria data. And what that means is the nitrogen is a key indicator for potential septic system failures. So we analyze that data to see if there were some potential hotspots in the area, if there were maybe more failing systems in a specific location that we could potentially target for outreach or education or even potential loans. And then in addition, we looked at the bacteria levels and what that means. And I'm going to show you those graphics here in just a minute. In addition, folks from ECU looked at groundwater, and they've done an extensive study over the last year. And some of that study actually spoke to what's happening with the groundwater. And here on this slide, you can see groundwater is actually increasing per their data at 0.43 inches per year. And 0.3 inches per year might not seem like a lot, but over time it could be extensive. And that water, groundwater, could actually start to get into the leach fields and start to affect the treatment process. So in our plan, we're thinking about what that looks like for future conditions. As well, the groundwater, we saw a lot of groundwater issues with properties that were below or at 7-foot mean sea elevation. We saw more challenges in those locations. So that's something that we'll be integrating into the plan moving forward. And we also saw there were a lot of groundwater issues, primarily in South Nags Head and the Sound Side. Those areas are lower elevation and seem to have some more challenges. So as I mentioned, we'll be looking at all of those and integrating them into our plan. And here's the graphic I wanted to share with you all that ECU had put out, looking at sea level and groundwater depth. And so the data here shows that sea level rise is going up to a little bit of an extent, but groundwater is actually rising a little bit faster. And you can see here in 2020 or so, those lines are starting to get a little bit closer together. So what does that mean for septic? Well, as I mentioned, the groundwater is coming up in either into or near the leach field, which is creating less treatment, less filtering capacity. And so we're looking at some raised beds in this area as well as advanced treatment, but those also come with caveats of more expenses or potential flooding issues. So we've got to balance all of those things when we're looking at septic for the area. And then in addition, this kind of shows what that looks like. So a lot of the systems were originally designed back in the 80s. They were fine. Based on the existing groundwater, you do a soil sample and a filtering test to determine the location of the septic, make sure it perks basically. And they were designed perfectly fine. There were some spikes and some blips potentially, but that's basically from heavy rainfalls. And then you can see currently this area in the blue kind of band, that's where we are now for some areas, specifically where the mean sea elevation is below 7 feet. And then if we simply project that number in the future with the same exact data, it could become a problem in the future. So we're going to try to address that in this management plan update. So here's some sample locations that ECU took across the area, including Nags Head, as well as what the groundwater depth looks like currently. So you can see the dots in red are mean groundwater depth of 0 or maybe even 1 to 2 feet below. And then yellow are 2 to 3.4. So you can see there's one yellow dot in South Nags Head. And then there's the light blue dot is 3.5 to 4.8 feet depth. So you can see middle of town, right by town hall, there's about a 4.8 feet groundwater depth there. And then over at Dowdy Park, same about 4.8 feet there. So you can see kind of the way the groundwater is changing throughout the whole entire area. And then the dark blue dot is a deeper depth of groundwater over at Bonnet Street. So some of those areas are varying and changing, and it's going to be difficult to manage in what that looks like because the areas are completely different. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what that looks like, and we're going to show you some more details here in just a second. And as I mentioned, potential alternate systems might be needed in the future. And we're looking at what that looks like, and we'll be providing a matrix, a decision matrix, so that won't be as difficult to determine. And then I wanted to show you some really great graphics that just reiterate what I had just mentioned. The areas that have a low depth to groundwater table are shown in red over here, as well as Soundside over by Whalebone area, as well as the Causeway. And then on both sides of South Nags Head, Oceanside and National Seashore, you can see those red areas are there as well. And then the areas in yellow and a little bit green are still having some challenges. So in between the highways, there's a lot of low-lying areas there, as well as the Soundside and the canal. And here's another shot of ground elevation, as I mentioned earlier. Anything that is at or below 7 feet mean sea elevation could be a challenge in the future. We're seeing a lot more issues in those areas. So more advanced systems are probably going to be needed in the future. So those areas are identified here in green and kind of like that yellowish color as well. So I've got another great poll question for you. Number 4, are there certain times when you're worried about your septic system failing, and how frequently? This is sort of similar to the question that we did earlier, but a little bit more in depth. So answer A is, I worry about my septic system all of the time. B, I worry about my septic system when it rains heavily. C, I worry about the system annually. D, I think about the system every 3 to 5 years. E is I think about the system infrequently. F, I don't think about my septic system at all. G is I don't have a septic system, and H is other. And I'll give you all another minute or so to get in your responses to the poll, but it looks like so far we've got, I worry about my septic system when it rains heavily. So just another minute if you have any last minute responses. So I'll close the poll now, and it looks like we have a winner. B, I worry about my septic system when it rains heavily. So that's something that we heard earlier, and I'm glad you all responded to that one. Thank you so much for your responses. And that's something that we have taken into consideration for the Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan update. And we'll make sure that we address what that looks like for y'all to make sure that your septic systems are healthy. So question 5, we've got another poll. What activities do you conduct to ensure your septic system is functioning properly? So if you would, please respond. This is a Wordle again, so it's going to be a bunch of words. And if you have a sentence, just take out the space and it should keep those words together. Pump, that's great. Inspect, excellent. Communicate with guests, I think that's excellent. I've seen some really interesting signs people will put out to guests saying, please don't flush certain things down the toilet. That's excellent. I'll give you all just another minute. Excellent. Thank you so much for your responses to that. So we have pumping, system, inspect again, twice, flushed, contractor, filter, schedule, look, communicate. Those are all great things to be able to make sure your septic system is functioning properly. Just going and walking where your leach field is, looking at the ground, making sure your grass is stable, there's no soggy areas, it's not bubbling up. Those are simple things that you can do, as well as your frequent maintenance and pumping. So thank you all for your responses. So next I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper into the data analysis and talk about some of the water quality parameters as well as bacteria. So as I mentioned, we looked at nitrogen and phosphorus, and nitrogen, as I mentioned, is particularly important as a contributor to coastal and estuarine algal blooms. Increased nitrogen can actually create those and create problems for our aquatic life. And so identifying those areas is really important to be able to make sure that we can either correct the situation or identify the source and try to help remediate it to some degree. So the data that was obtained by the Town of Nags Head showed there were some exceedances in the area, and those included Old Cove. There was some exceedances particularly in that area, as well as near Town Hall by the fire station, and then in South Nags Head at Junco's there was some exceedances down there as well. So it's not widespread across all of Nags Head. You can see areas to the north didn't have any exceedances, and there were some hit or miss spots that we had identified from the data that was pulled since 2005. So it was a really big data set that we looked at to determine if there were any issues. So those areas will be studied further, and different plans will be put in place for those specific areas to help with that. In addition, we looked at total phosphorus from the samples that were obtained from the town, and there wasn't really a large exceedance. The total phosphorus number, it mixes differently with water, and it's harder to detect because it gets diluted very quickly. So we didn't see a major exceedance across Nags Head from that particular parameter. In addition, bacteria like fecal coliform, enterococci, or E. coli, there were some exceedances across Nags Head. And so enterococci is one of the primary indicators used for beach closures, and that's the one we really focused on. It was monitored at several groundwater sites across all of Nags Head, and you can see here from the orange dots in both groundwater and surface water, there was a lot of exceedances, and that number is 35 colonies per 100 milliliters in coastal zones. So there was a lot of identifiers and issues that had come up within the data sets to indicate there was some problems happening, and that included the north side of town, as well as Sound side, the Canal Cove, as well as some areas south at Whalebone and South Nags Head. So it was pretty widespread. The control well at Nags Head Woods didn't have any exceedances. So that was typical. I would have expected to see that because of the no development in that area, which was an interesting indicator of what's actually going on. And then here's a plot of what that looked like across all of the sites that were obtained. So the dashed line is the exceedance line, and then the dark blue is the groundwater samples, then the light blue is the surface water samples. So it's kind of hard to read this slide, but you can kind of see for fecal, there was a couple of bars that go over that line at Wrightsville 1 and 2, as well as Juncos and South Nags Head. And then for enterococci, the one I had mentioned that they use a lot for indicators for beach closures, there's a large number that go over that line or in exceedance. So you can see what that looks like in just a different format. And then the E. coli, it's sort of hit or miss. There's no groundwater samples that had gone over, but maybe about half of the surface water samples were over the exceedance limit in that area. So just a basic shot of what that looks like. And these samples aren't being taken continuously. They're grab samples that are taken occasionally. So it paints a small picture, but it might not be the whole entire thing. So that's something that we will be recommending, is to obtain more frequent sampling so we can get a better data set of what that looks like and how it correlates to either septic failures or rain events. So question 6, now that you're more familiar or semi-familiar with the groundwater and water quality data, what do you think the most pressing issues are related to septic system function and management? And the answers here are A, sea level rise exacerbating existing conditions, creating threats to septic systems. B, groundwater elevations getting closer to the surface. C, flooding on top of septic systems. D, septic failure affecting stormwater, surface water, sound, and ocean water quality. E, proper septic system function and long-term maintenance. Or F, other. So I'll give you all a couple minutes to read those again and figure out which ones do you think are the most important, and you can answer more than one as well. So I'll give you all just one more minute if you want to put in any last minute responses. Excellent. I'm going to close the poll now. Thank you so much for your responses to this poll. So from this, we saw that groundwater elevations getting close to the surface gets me worried. That's something that is more pressing issue than maybe was before. And then that the septic failures could affect groundwater, surface water. So I think the data shows exactly that. And there's ways that we can help mitigate that here in Nags Head, and doing some of those maintenance activities is the first thing that you can do. And then if there are systems that are failing, replacing them is the second. So now I'm going to move on to the Todd DeCraft Septic Health Initiative program updates and recommendations. So we took a deep dive into the program and all of the amazing things that it provides now, and maybe taking into consideration groundwater, flooding, and water quality challenges, what that could look like in the future to help people continue to maintain their septic systems to make sure that they're viable in the future. So just to give you a quick background, the Todd DeCraft Septic Health Initiative inspection and credit since 2005, a total of 2,231 septic system inspections have been conducted across all of Nags Head. You can see those actually not in this map, this is for water credits, but that's a big number for all of Nags Head, and basically means a lot of these systems have been inspected at least once, and some people call in regularly. Every 3 to 5 years, they call Kylie and the town and ask for an inspection. So it's really good. People are thinking about that, and it's a free inspection. So it doesn't cost anything to call the town to have your system looked at and figure out maybe if it needs to be pumped or if it needs a replacement, whatever that happens to be. The town can help provide that information to you. And then in addition, from those inspections, over 500 septic systems have been pumped out and credits have been obtained. So that's this picture here to the side. The bars in blue are all the credits that have been obtained throughout Nags Head. And you can see from the northern part of town, Soundside, the canals, as well as Oceanside, and the random gamut of properties along South Nags Head, a lot of people have taken advantage of this program. And it's something that can be done more than once. So it's not a one-time credit. It can be a credit that is given every couple of years. So that's something that people need to be thinking about, especially as costs continue to rise for different things. So really important credit to be able to help people maintain their systems. And then in addition, if people had a failing system and they needed some money to be able to fix that, they weren't prepared to replace their system, a total of 133 low interest loans have been obtained through the town to a value of over $120,000 to help with that. So that's an amazing contribution that the town has helped people fix their systems, fix their failing systems. It's an amazing program that I don't think any other community does, honestly. So it's something the town is really helping people out to be able to make sure that there's good water quality and the systems are getting maintained, repaired, fixed, and we can still continue to have an amazing location for people to come visit and live. And then again, here's a picture of some of the loans in the area. You can see there's been a lot of loans up here in the northern part of town, from 8th Street all the way to Curlow Street between the highways, and then south from that area into Soundside, as well as Old Cove, the canals, and then several properties down in South Nags Head also have obtained loans. So it's a widespread. It's not just one single area that's potentially failing. There's septic systems across all of Nags Head that are having issues. So a lot of people have taken advantage of the program. So now I want to propose some recommendations that both the AC, the advisory committee, as well as Tetra Tech has put together along with the Town of Nags Head, based on all of our conversations, the data analysis, the stakeholder engagement, and what that could look like for the initiatives. So from the data I just mentioned, there's a potential to conduct more inspections. So we wanted to maybe increase those free inspections and what that looks like for small conventional systems. As you know, there's over 3,600 systems in all of Nags Head, and it would be great to try to hit those every 5 years. Every single one of them every 5 years would be an amazing goal. But maybe it's more like I don't know, 50% or 30% of all of those septic systems get inspected by the town would be wonderful. And then in addition to increasing inspections, we wanted to maybe look at increasing the septic tank pump out rate rebate. So we had heard that maybe $45 isn't enough. A typical pump out rate costs around $300. So we were looking at maybe increasing that rebate a little bit, maybe to make it a little bit more worth people's time to be able to send that invoice over to the town of Wake Forest to get that credit. In addition, we heard that repairing systems is costing more because of fill that needs to be brought in to raise the system up, as well as some challenges with some other additional costs. That loan maximum of $7,500 might not be enough to cover the whole entire system. So maybe looking at raising that loan maximum to maybe a little bit higher cost would be beneficial so people can continue to afford repairs. In addition, we looked at this really amazing program. I heard you all say that it'd be great for someone to remind me to pump out my system every 3 to 5 years. I can't remember what that looks like. So there's an opportunity to create a voluntary septic management subscription program. And what that could be is reminders to pump out your system, the free inspection, maybe increased rebate, and a variety of other things to help with that. So we are looking in the details of what that looks like exactly. But we thought a voluntary septic management subscription program might be something that people would be very interested in, paying the town a small fee to be able to have their system either maintained or help with the maintenance of that system a little bit more frequently. In addition, with the Todd DeCraft Septic Health Initiative, we're looking at maybe expanding that groundwater water quality and bacteria sampling data. So we get more either continuous samples or more frequent samples. So we have some better statistics on what that looks like, if those potential areas of exceedance are actual, or it was just a kind of a blip in the system. And so we're trying to look at consistency of what that is, especially from a management perspective. If certain areas need a different type of septic system, that would be good to have that information to be able to adjust what that looks like. In addition, we heard that a lot of people don't even know they have a septic, or they don't know where the septic is. They can't find it. They have no idea. And so increasing education for both owners, renters, and visitors is going to be really paramount for this program moving forward. And it's something that we need to talk about more often. And some of those education and outreach efforts might look like having ecotourism and green business initiatives promoting our septic, as well as the way and quality of life here in Nags Head. I talked about just briefly some signage that rental facilities or owners could put in the houses for renters to remember not to flush things down the toilet that don't belong there. Another fun little thing to help people remember to not put grease down their sink, or even utilizing the garbage disposal. Those are things that actually can easily clog a septic system. So these little grease can lids are wonderful little things that can be given out in a welcome kit, or even at festivals or town events that can be used over and over again. In addition, we heard that running toilets can actually fail a septic system very, very easily. So a toilet flapper rebate program is something that we've heard other communities actually do. That could be something that the town of Nags Head could do as well. In addition, really ramping up social media and doing a lot of posts on, hey, don't forget to maintain your septic system. Hey, it's wintertime. Let's do your inspection before the rental season comes. Little things like that are going to be great to help promote the program, as well as remind people to maintain their system. In addition, we will be working with the Outer Banks Association of Realtors to really hone the message in the potential contracts for rental agencies, really looking at septic provisions and what that looks like. In addition, the Nags Headline newsletter, putting some more information in there. The town does a great job of disseminating information either on the town webpage or through this newsletter, and that's another outlet that can be used more frequently. And then another one is increasing citizen education, citizen science, where you have families who are renting a house, go out and take water quality samples. The samples aren't going to be lab quality by any means, but it could be an indicator of potential issues, potential problems, or just a good way for people to understand water quality and what that looks like for our area. So I've got another great question for you. Question 7, select your top 3 revisions or additions to the Todd D. Craft Septic Health Initiative. A is increase free town septic system inspections of small conventional systems. B is increase septic tank pump out rebate amount. C is increase loan amount. D, create voluntary septic management subscription service program. E, expand groundwater, water quality, and bacteria sampling. F, increase education and outreach. G, provide opportunity for citizen science. And H, promote green business initiative. So I'll give you all a couple minutes to vote for your top 3 favorite initiatives. I'll give it just one more minute. Do you have any last minute ads? So it looks like we have a clear winner for the top initiative is to increase the septic tank pump out rebate. And that's amazing. I'm really glad you all had selected that. And I think that's something that could be woven into the program updates in the future. And then we have a tie for 2nd and 3rd place with 3 to create a voluntary septic service program, subscription program, excuse me, and then expand the groundwater, water quality monitoring, and then increase education. So I think those are all things, again, that can be woven into the program. And we will make sure that that is something that moves forward with this, as well as gets expanded in the future. So I believe this is the last question for y'all. What is your perception of the town's decentralized wastewater management plan and the Todd D. Craft Septic Health Initiative? This is a Wordle, so you can put any words you would like in here. Again, if you have a sentence, just take out the space so the words stay together. Thank you so much for the responses. You can keep putting them in there. So I'm just going to read a couple of them off. So best, nice, heart emoji, save the town, informative. I'm thinking it says probably thank you. And then one of them, presentation, thank presentation, and then needs more education. Oh, it got all crazy. Excellent, informative, bigger problem. This is great. So thank you so much. I'm going to close the poll now and we'll move on to closing. So next steps, with all of this information that we have, all of this data, potential recommendations to the Todd DeCraft Septic Health Initiative, we also wanted to poll you all to get more feedback, get a little bit more questionnaire. So if you want to scan this QR code with your phone, it'll take you directly to a poll or community questionnaire. It won't be nearly as difficult, hopefully, as the polls that I've presented to you this evening. But it's some good information that we can utilize and integrate into the Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan. So that will be open until December 1st. So if you want to add to that, or if you already have, thank you so much. And we'll be taking those questions in and utilizing them for the update. In addition to gathering all those community questionnaires, we'll be working on getting a draft to staff, as well as the advisory committee, to start going into the heavy details of the Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan update. And we'll be integrating the public forum comments into that as well, to make sure that your voices are heard and we put together all of the parts and pieces to make sure that septic systems are viable in the future. And then last but not least, as Bob Mueller had mentioned, we'll be presenting the final plan to the Board of Commissioners for public comment and hopefully approval in February of next year. So stay tuned. We will have that over and available so y'all can comment on that. And if any revisions are needed, we will update that and get it out for approval and implementation. So with that, I would like to thank you for your time this evening. And I guess we can open it up for questions as well.
Holly, if people can raise their hand, I can either allow them to talk or they can enter a question in the chat box if there are any questions.
That would be perfect. I would love to answer any questions. Or Kylie, I know you've been monitoring the chat too. So if there's anything that has come up, please feel free to share.
I have not seen any questions. So if you have any, please feel free to type them in the chat box or unmute yourself and you can ask us and we'll do our best to answer any questions you have.
No questions? I don't see any in the chat. Can we include septic education when purchasing property? Yeah, that's something we actually talk to a lot of realtors about. And there's at that point of purchase, there's a septic inspection that happens. So that's something that initially can happen, but that's something that actually there could be a flyer or a handout that's given during that transition time, so the new owner understands their septic and maybe a location. So a lot of times you'll get a plat map with your deed and things like that. So those are really helpful things to understand what that looks like. In addition, we were looking at obtaining all of the records from Dare County and figuring out where the locations of all the septic were based on plat maps, as well as permitting, and getting that into a bigger GIS system. So it'll make it a little bit easier for people to understand where their system is. And then we can expand that education as well for new homeowners, especially as they enter the town of Nags Head, and maybe a welcome packet of some sort with some of those freebie giveaways to help them get accustomed to having a septic if they've never had one before. Thank you for your question. And panelist Bob or Mike O'Driscoll or Mary, if you would like to pose a question to anyone who is listening, feel free.
Hi, Holly. This is Mary. Don't really have a question, but want to thank you. I thought the presentation was great. It's a lot of information, and I love the polls too. They were pretty cool and effective. So, good job.
Thanks so much, Mary. And my apologies for that poor first poll that didn't work. I don't know what happened, but I'm really glad that the other ones were working and you all were able to participate. And hopefully it was a little eye-opening to see the responses of what people were thinking. So I appreciate your all's input as well.
There's a question that just came in about an easy treat system.
Yeah, Bob, do you want to take that one?
And sure, I'm happy to. An easy treat system is it's a fixed media wastewater pre-treatment system. The intent is to lower the biochemical oxygen demand or the strength of the wastewater, and also the suspended solids concentration in the wastewater to make it more likely that that system will continue to function properly over time. Any of the pre-treatment systems do require some inspection by a certified on-site wastewater system operator. And typically for the easy treats, it's, I believe, 4 inspections a year for the first 2 years. If the systems are functioning properly after 2 years, that inspection frequency can be changed to twice a year.
Kylie, would that be considered a standard septic system and for the pump out rebate, free inspection, and septic loan?
Right. So Easy Treat is a more advanced system currently. It would not be available for the free inspection, but a pump out, I believe it would be.
That is correct. Yes. It would not be a part of our inspection, free inspection piece of the program. I do know that we do receive inspection requests for those, and typically either myself or one of the inspectors will look that up. If they notice that it is not a conventional system, they will inform the homeowner and educate them on what needs to be done, and having a certified operator in those inspections.
And we're seeing a lot more of those type of systems pop up in the town of Nags Head. So that might be something we need to consider moving forward, of what that looks like for the Todd DeCraft Septic Health Initiative. If that is going to be something that is challenging for people, some education might be very beneficial, additional education, as well as maybe considering some other opportunities for either inspections, pump outs, or general education in that area. But thank you for the question. Do we have any questions about groundwater or heavy, intense rainfall events or any of that? I know you all had indicated that was a concern of yours for your septic systems.
Yeah, Holly, maybe if I could follow up on the easy treat system anyway, just to say that that type of a system is great for protecting public health and the environment. So having something like that, it is a state of the art. It's like a miniature treatment plant in your backyard. And the nice thing about having that regular maintenance is that your drain field will probably never fail because all the treatment happens in the boxes. So the management will take care of keeping it working, relatively, for a very, very long time.
And we also heard that some of those more advanced systems can get really, really pricey. So I think we had heard maybe 40,000 or so versus a traditional system that costs $7,500. So that's a pretty big difference. But if you think about the water quality that's coming out of a more advanced system, you're getting very, very well treated water coming from those more advanced systems. Obviously, you've got to pay for it. And so that's why we were thinking about maybe upping the loan price a little bit to help offset some of those costs. Might be really beneficial to be able to allow people to maybe convert from a traditional system to more of an advanced system, especially in those low-lying areas that I identified, at 7 foot below mean sea level or at or below. Those systems are probably going to become more prominent and more used in those locations. And there's a lot of other systems that are out there besides just Easy Treat that are more advanced, that use different types of technologies, and some are better than others, but they do start to get really pricey. So that's something that we definitely need to consider moving forward for some of these challenging areas.
Well, it may be a balance between a lot of fill, brought in to build up the system up in the air, or having the extra treatment in order to reduce the vertical separation to water table. So there's definitely a balance there. And if you can, replace what you have as is, that's perfect. But in these areas, obviously you were presenting a lot of challenged areas, so have to start thinking about new ways to do things. So. Bob, do you want to jump in? You're very
I did have my
knowledgeable.
hand up there for just a second, but the key is separation distance between the zone of application where the leach field line is located and the shallow water table. And as water tables begin to rise, then either additional levels of treatment will be required, or you'll have to lift water into an imported media on the site to maintain that separation distance.
So yeah, there's a lot of complicated systems to septic. Sometimes it's not always just run out of your house into a box into a leach field. So those are things that we will definitely be considering in the Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan update, especially as more challenges arise, and really thinking about what that looks like for the town, as well as the future of wastewater treatment in the area. So if we don't have any more questions, I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your evening to learn a little bit more about the Decentralized Wastewater Management Plan update, as well as the Todd D. Craft Septic Health Initiative. Hopefully you've taken a little bit of something away from my presentation tonight, as well as all the data that we presented to you. I know there was a lot of information that we threw at you pretty quickly. So there's a lot of information also out on the town's webpage from the meetings, and we'll be posting a lot more of this as we progress further into the plan itself. Be on the lookout for the draft plan coming in early 2022. And then in addition, as I mentioned earlier, if you have not participated in the citizen and community questionnaire, please feel free to to answer some of those questions for us. We would love to integrate your comments into the management plan update moving forward and make sure that we address some of your concerns as well. So again, thank you so much, and thank you for the advisory committee as well as town staff, Kylie Shephard, Holly White, and Mary Clark and Mike O'Driscoll for attending as panelists this evening as well.
Thank you. Take care.
You all take care. Have a great day and be safe.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great holiday.
Appreciate all the hard